you from us, evil spirits. We drive you back to nowhere, and with the power of Christ, forbid you to inhabit the world of life.
Writer, director, producer Stephen Cognetti returns once again to bring us to Hell House. So we are talking Hell House LLC Lineage, a 2025 fifth movie in this series. And this is the first one which is not a found footage movie. We'll talk a little bit about the Hell House LLC as a franchise in just a minute. And what's the story? Well, it focuses actually on two characters, and we have a returning character from the third movie who is kind of getting like nightmares and stuff about her experiences and stuff, and kind of feels like she's being hunted. And then we get a character from the fourth movie kind of go on a separate type story. There is a little bit of kind of intersection. She wants to try and exorcise these spirits. So we kind of follow two characters really on their kind of separate journeys with a little bit of kind of, as I say, crossover. And I think, well, let's talk about the franchise before we go into what works and what doesn't. So the original Hell House LLC, and I suggest you watch the director's cut if you do or haven't seen any of these, is I think one of the best examples of a found footage movie. It's an extremely good and extremely creepy found footage film. Low budget, but very, very good. Primarily the scares came from these kind of mannequin style clowns. Now, as I say, watch the director's cut if you haven't seen the original, because they actually went back and filmed a couple more scenes after it's kind of got a lot of positive buzz. So there's a little bit more kind of going on in the director's cut. For me personally, I wasn't a huge fan of the second one, and even less the third one, where I felt the series was buckling under its own mythology, trying to kind of add to this kind of what's going on and things like this. The fourth one was actually more of a spin-off, and as such was a little bit more of a standalone story, and I think it benefited from that. It wasn't as good as the original. So here we have this one. Now, let's talk about what works. Now, I actually am happy with the non-found footage style of filmmaking here, because we are following two characters, and then they're not together for the majority of the movie. You know, it's a little bit unbelievable that we would follow them in the found footage format to a degree. There's like a couple of scenes which are in found footage, but the majority of it is a traditionally styled filmed movie. So it kind of makes sense as we are filming different characters in different places, doing different things. It's more of a traditionally filmed movie, and as such it feels more kind of standard in that regard. So I actually am happy with that. I think this is the story that they wanted to tell, and I think it works better in this format, because it would just be a little bit unbelievable that two separate characters are both filming you know, on cameras, both of whom have had experience about what's going on, and they just happen to be doing it at the same time. So I kind of understand that decision and actually support it. What else can we say that works in this movie's favour? I do think there are there's some scary moments. They actually tend to linger on the what's going on screen a little bit more in this movie, perhaps because it's not a found footage film. So you do get to see a little bit more of this clown and other things happening and what they're actually doing to people, rather than kind of, you know, cuts and stuff like that. My personal favourite scares, though, are things that are happening in the background. You'll see, for example, someone walking like towards the camera in the foreground, and you'll just see the clown's head kind of slowly kind of turn and follow this character. And there's a scene that doesn't involve the clown, when one of the characters goes into one of these houses, and you kind of there's like a woman in a chair, and you kind of see her head kind of go back and kind of crack and kind of go all the way back, if that makes sense. And it's kind of blurred, so you're focused on the foreground and stuff, but you just kind of, you can make out what's going on in the background just about, without it being drawing your attention too much to it. So I thought this movie did actually have a couple of kind of decent scares. Now, the movie is trying to kind of like tie these films together by having, as I say, characters from the fourth film, character from the third film, and trying to sort of like tie it all together, because it has become quite convoluted. Does it succeed? Well, we'll find out at the conclusion, I guess. But I understand that is the intent here at the very least. I think the movie is competently directed, and this isn't the first movie that Cognetti has actually made in the traditional style. He directed another one which was nothing to do with the Hell House movies in a traditionally filmed style. So this isn't his first foray in that. It's nothing kind of like particularly sort of outstanding in regards to direction or anything like that, but it's solid, I would say. And I think the cast do a fine job, and especially when you've considered these characters have come from a found footage style and are now sort of transitioning into the same franchise but in a different style of filming. I do have to give some props, because obviously there is probably a slightly different skill involved there. So I didn't think the the cast did a bad job, if I'm honest. What they are problems here is in the script. Now, as I've kind of alluded to, this whole franchise, with maybe the exception of the first one, buckles under its own weight, and this is massively true of this one. It reintroduces characters from previous movies that I don't think you people are especially familiar with. I mean, they've only been in one movie each, and it treats it like you know exactly what is going on. And even if you do know exactly what's going, I still think this movie is convoluted. I think the fourth movie, which was the spin-off, was a better idea, where it didn't even have a clean break. It was still connected, but it had a bit more of a standalone story. And I think this one goes back to trying to explain what's kind of going on with this massively convoluted mess of a franchise, with adding new things to it. And it's just like, my God. And it just cannot take all of this kind of like the weight of this mythology. Now, I've often said this in reviews: when you have one person behind a kind of a film franchise, or a film in one off, in this case Stephen Cognetti, the writer, the director, the producer, the man in charge of everything here, he knows exactly where this story is going, because he has created everything to do with it. So in his mind, he knows where all the pieces are on the board. But when you are watching this going in cold, or even if you've seen the original movies, it's you're not as intimately involved as Stephen Cognetti is in these movies. So you're just thinking, what the hell is going on? Who are these people? Why are they doing this? So just the basic kind of like structure of the movie, I just do not think is particularly sort of is very well done. There's lots of flashbacks. Sometimes you don't realise you're watching a flashback. I think it's a little confusing having two separate leads, doing almost separate sort of stories, and then even within those sort of arcs themselves, I think there's some nonsensical stuff that's kind of going on. We have one of these characters gets a priest to go into this particular house with them, and like the priest is like, right, follow my instructions, and they're like, nah, I'll just do what I want. Why you ask the priest to go and help you if you're just not going to do what you're told? I mean, it just seems ridiculous that they know that they're in danger, but they still make these dumbass decisions. There's a character that I felt sort of commit suicide for I didn't think any real reason. I mean, why? I mean, he's afraid that the house is going to kill him, or these ghostly things are going to kill him, so he just kills himself. I mean, if you wanted to die, then why not just wait until this thing kills you? At least you might have a chance to, to get away. It's like the logic here just goes out the window. I also think the movie, it's like a PG-13 movie, so there's not really any sort of anything graphic necessarily on screen. Not that I think it necessarily needs to be, but it does feel a little bit muted, I have to say. And I also think the decision here to show more, certainly to do with the clowns, we literally see them walking around at this point, I think robs it of some of its urgency that you had, and it's kind of like, you know, this sense of you're not quite sure what's happened, and you know something there is supernatural. The clowns and stuff feel less scary and less impactful because, you know, we see them. It just looks like some guy dressed as a clown, to be brutally honest. And I'm thinking, what would you do with this? You would try and tackle them or something. I mean, surely they haven't got a weapon or anything. So it just looks like some guy dressed as a clown with a mask. I mean, you just move the mask. That's what I would think. But you wouldn't necessarily think it was something supernatural. Anyway, so, you know, I think this movie is massively misjudged. They even introduce a third house. I'm thinking, no, stop introducing stuff. I mean, god damn it. This movie just cannot take the weight of its own mythology and just crumbles. And this is meant to be the last movie, but let me just tell you, this movie does not exactly tie things up. In actual fact, it 100% is feels like it's left on a cliffhanger. You're thinking, the final movie? I mean, really? I mean, I don't think it will be, but my suggestion is just to kind of like if you want to do this, do another Haunted House movie. Do another. You know, it's a different Hell House. You know, it's something else. I think this one, you know, you need a producer on these movies, to be honest, who's going to say, no, Stephen Cognetti, people do not know what the hell's going on. You've lost the kind of the magic that was the original movie. Let's kind of try and get back to that. As such, this is a pretty disappointing movie. It's not a terrible film. It has its moments, I would say. But overall, it's, you know, if you think about the pantheon of horror movies, and I think the budget of this was $125,000, so it's not like a mega low budget movie. You know, it's disappointing, and it's down to unfortunately Cognetti, I feel. It's a 4 out of 10, so a below average but not terrible film. Have you seen it? What were your thoughts? Leave me comments and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.